Grindstone Lake Foundation, a Wisconsin Lakes Board member, and a Sawyer County Lakes Forum Board member. Sawyer County in the Great North Woods. She has been a Grindstone Lake property owner for 37 years, is retired, a full-time Wisconsin resident for 4 years, and she's loving it. And she's going to tell us her story and help us figure out what we can do on our lake districts.
Thank you very much. So building a Grindstone Lake community has been an effort that we've been pursuing for about the last 5 years. So if you looked at the track we're in, its capacity, well, how do you build organizational capacity? I think that's one of our biggest challenges for all of us as lake organizations. So I first added what I put into the agenda today in terms of what I was going to talk about. I wanted to point out some key words: neighbor to neighbor, community, and of course, passion, protection, what we're all about. But how did we get there? So first, I'd like to start with what kind of lake are we talking about? You know, all have different kinds of lakes. And I mean that sincerely, because if you're a 300-acre lake versus a 3,200-acre lake, you certainly have some differences. Well, and ours has a maximum depth of 60 feet. We also have a 2-story fishery. It's considered a Class A lake, so it has no major AIS at this time, and we're fighting to keep it out. In addition, we just have 57 acres that was a former cranberry bog that the Grindstone Lake Foundation took out of production and off the market. So we're very, very fortunate. However, we still have a lot of things to learn and people to engage. So how we were doing that? In 2023, we started with a comprehensive lake management plan. We hadn't done that for a while. And of course, you know, that's a very long, involved process. And out of it, we came up with the traditional things: fighting aquatic invasive species, fishery, shoreline restoration, and water quality, you name it. But we also found out that our lake was interested in having a community. So part of that comprehensive lake management plan was a survey. And this survey was conducted before we started the discussion sessions. And we had over 51% of responses. We sent it out to the 372 owners. We got those contacts by the Sawyer County tax registration. So we got everybody that was involved and on that lake. We also sent emails to those people we had email addresses to. So we had a good response. But in that process, we learned a lot about our current owners on the lake. Who are we going to be talking to, and who are we trying to convince that they really had to be a part of this effort? So from a population standpoint, as I said, we have 374 properties, but 35% of them only came on weekends. In addition, summer people were 24%, and year-round were 14%. So we had a group of people that was very diverse in terms of how they viewed this resource, how they viewed what they could do, what they should do, and what they wanted to do to protect it. So most of them, the amount of time was less than half a year that they would be at the lake. And consequently, we realized that short-term engagement activities would be best, if not virtual as well. Some additional statistics in terms of less than 6 months, but we also found that 38% had owned the property over 30 years. So there's a legacy involved here with this lake. And in fact, many of the cabins, 52%, were 30 years old or older. So this was a lake with a lot of legacy. In fact, this year, one of our families is going to be celebrating 100 years on the lake. We also have short-term rentals. So there's a big mix. Then, remember way back when, anyway, most of the people, or a good share of our people, came from Illinois. They sent the families up north for the whole summer with the kids. The dads traditionally stayed in the city and worked, came up maybe on long weekends. Well, now we're over 50% from Minnesota, very few from Illinois. And in fact, then Wisconsin is second to that. Okay, one more thing about our population and our lake before I get into what kinds of things we started to do in order to build that community. So, what do people do on this lake? What do they want to do on this lake? Well, of course, it's family and lake oriented. And we have mostly summer, and we have fishing, paddle boats, we have motorboats, we have big motorboats, we have small motorboats, but it's big enough with a lot of good behavior to accommodate everybody at the moment. So we'll see how that goes. But it's very typical in terms of what people want to enjoy and what they believe they deserve to be able to enjoy on a lake in northern Wisconsin. So now we get to the good stuff. In other words, the Grindstone Lake neighborhoods and the neighbors to neighbors and what we're doing. So one of the things that was we heard via the grapevine that a couple families had actually left Grindstone and gone to other lakes in the area because they didn't think there was enough community. They felt isolated. Nobody talked to them. So that was part of the sort of whispering behind the scenes that we had heard about, as well as looking at what the comprehensive lake management study showed us. So then we started this process. So this was the actual quote in our in our comprehensive lake management study, that we were needing to build a Grindstone Lake community. And so consequently, if we're going to do that, how were we going to do that? Well, we had someone that was absolutely fabulous with our membership and databases. So we looked at how could we divide up the lake. But first of all, we wanted to give people an understanding that something was going on, that we were trying to do something about this situation. So we have a newsletter, and we have email, we have a website. This is what our newsletter looks like that comes out once a year, plus other information. So we used all those methods, as well as the annual meeting, to get people excited, interested, and involved. So this is what our marvelous person in membership did. We divided up the lake in 12 different neighborhoods. First, we called them zones. We thought, well, that's not very friendly. And we actually called the people zone captains. That was even less friendly. So we thought, well, we better be a little better about this and, have a friendly community instead of an unfriendly community. So in these 12 neighborhoods, we have neighborhood leaders, not zone captains. And they vary anywhere from 20 to 35 properties. And the ones that have more properties are typically ones that were resorts in the past. So they've been broken up into smaller condo-type units. In addition, we had to make sure that everybody understood exactly where these boundaries were. And they had been divided on major lines, trying to create neighborhoods that made sense, whether there were roads or whatever. And we distributed this. And then we started to recruit neighborhood leaders. So we needed to have them understand what we thought their role might be. And there were 3 major elements to the role. So I'll go through these one at a time. So know your neighbors. We had someone that became a neighborhood leader that had been on the lake over 30 years and didn't know anybody more than one house away. And now she's a neighborhood leader. She knows all the people in her neighborhood and thinks it's the best thing that's ever happened to her. So we're hearing stories like that as we move ahead with this process. So we started recruiting neighborhood leaders for each of these. And right now, we have 11 out of 12 filled, which isn't too bad. So consequently, we have welcome packages for them to use to invite people to join the Grindstone Lake Association. We identify properties when they're new. We also have them help us identify properties and changes, because some properties that change hands don't ever get advertised. They change because somebody knows somebody. And those take a long time to get into the legal area. What else did we have them focus on? Well, building community, what we've been talking about for the last few minutes. How do you do that? You have a picnic, you have a happy hour. You make the effort to meet your neighbors. And you have an excuse to meet your neighbors because you're a neighborhood leader. And everyone has been told about that there are now neighborhoods and that we're trying to get to know each other. You also have things like neighborhood watches. And we provided them with many resources, which I'll go into in just a moment, that allowed them to know how to get a hold of their neighbors, whether they were out of state, appeared sometimes, or they're a lot. This is one that we're still kind of working on. This is observing and monitoring Grindstone Lake. As I said, we have very little AIS, and we want to keep it that way. So we're working with the Citizen Lake Monitoring Network and trying to build into these neighborhoods people that will watch for the invasive species, will keep an eye out for a fish kill, for whatever, and be able to communicate that. And therefore, and again, having that update when we can do something about it in a much more efficient manner. As I was noting, we did not take these people and throw them in the lake and say, sink or swim on your own. We thought that might be a little rude. So we've created resources for these folks. And one of the ones that is particularly important is the neighborhood coordinator. This person is on the board of directors for the Grindstone Lake Association. And she is intimately involved with our decisions, our discussions, and she's become very important in the two-way street between the neighborhood leaders and the board. We can get things out to these people ahead of time before we send out all major kind of messages. We can hear back from them. We're constantly getting suggestions or saying, well, do you know about this? Do you want to do something about this? Tell us what you're thinking about this. So that resource has been really important. And she does do things like Zoom meetings, keeps them motivated, involved, understands if they need a replacement, things like that, and comes up with activities. It's like the calendar is getting very busy with her leadership. But we didn't stop there. We also have information for these individuals. We can get the tax information from Sawyer County, and we do, and that's how we send letters and newsletters to everybody that owns property. And as well, we also have the email addresses and the phone numbers for those that are association members. So again, our marvelous membership person and database person, thank you, is adept at breaking out the neighborhoods. So each neighborhood leader has all the information on every property that's in that area. So they have the information that they can go out and reach to these people. It's in a nice little Excel spreadsheet, and of course we talk about new owners a lot. But then we wanted these people to reinforce each other. So we created a list that has all the neighborhood leaders, their information, specifically which neighborhood they're involved with, the exact set of locations that go with it, so they can help each other as well as work with the coordinator. So they get together and talk about things and say, hey, we've come up with this great idea, and we go, oh, wonderful, let's do it. And there's sometimes co-leaders, because with 35 properties, that gets to be a bit much. Well, we can't forget about stuff. So we do have things for them as well. For example, a map of Grindstone, so they can see where these people are, besides just the divisions, as well as a summary of our comprehensive lake management plan. I have a copy of the management plan here. As well, we have the Sawyer County Information Directory, because somebody new might say, well, how do we find this? And if you're not there very often, it's hard to figure out. And we certainly can't forget ordinances. The lake that we're on and the township has a 700-foot 700 feet ordinance for wake boats, and in addition to the other state ordinances. So we want to make sure that these people understand what it is that we know is necessary. Last but not least, websites that they can go to for further information. And then we tried to also add meet and greet resources. One of the things that's hard is walking up to somebody's house, cold calling your neighbor, and saying, "Hi, I'm your neighbor," without a reason to do it. Like, "Oh, okay, who the heck are you?" You know, let's see, Fuller Brush, Watkins, Tupperware, I don't know. So we also work on giving them ideas for that approach strategy. Last year, our approach was that, guess what? Our annual meeting, which we have in July, is not at the same place we've had it for the last 10 years. It's a different location. So we had little brochures printed up saying, hey, this is where it is. In addition, this coming year, we also have some more information we're going to be handing out, including that our organization is 30 years old this year. So we're going to be doing some celebrating. Last but not least is new owner kits. These we send out by direct mail to everybody for their county-based address where their taxes are. I have a sample of that as well. But we also make sure the lake leaders know what's in it and have copies of everything. This is what it looks like. And quickly, in the last minute, before a question maybe, what are we doing next? Well, we have our traditional logo, which you've seen earlier. We've also created a neighborhood logo that's more friendly and more next generation, perhaps, and not using it necessarily in the newsletter places, but on different things that we can hand out. But most importantly, we're going to have a directory. We have not had a directory before, and it's going to be with all the association members in it, and we're organizing it by neighborhoods so that people can see who their neighbors are, plus some other information and maps and things like this. So this is an endeavor we've not tried before. Then we are increasing our social activities. We already have an annual meeting. We have socials. We have, say hello to the next person on the dock. We have a sandbar. So we're trying to increase that as well. And there is recognition. We're working on the idea of, when somebody goes up to a door, if they have a hat on that says Grindstone Lake Association, it might not be quite so intimidating. So this is all in process, but we basically started this in the last 3 to 4 years, and we have over 50% members now of the association. And last year, we had an annual meeting that we had over 100 people show up, more than we've ever had. So I think there's some good ideas behind this and actually has made a difference in terms of how we're growing our community. Now, somebody's yelling at me, so we get one question, and that's it. But afterwards, I'm available. Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Ooh. I believe so. Aren't these? So all the slides and everything will be available within two weeks for every presentation. But I think one of the things to note is that you got to know who you're talking to and what they're going to want to hear and can do. So understanding your population first is primary. Yes. Right now, the question is, what's the cost for distribution? And the distribution right now that has a cost in above is the new owner's packet. And it actually costs $3 to mail and printing out some things. But overall, the neighborhood to neighborhood program has basically taken time and some printing of a few things and distribution by email. But we've added it to what we already are doing rather than having a large incremental cost. that makes sense.